So, today, with the World Championship Finals having just gone underway and our new World Champion has already been crowned, I'm going over every game step by step in this video series for today. Every game one video, starting with this first one. We're going over the first game. So I'm going to talk a bit even more over the draft in total, over the specific picks and over the team comps. Not going over the games because first of all I don't want to directly spoil them. Second of all, because you can watch the games, you can watch highlights. I'm not a game review channel, I'm not going over highlights, just going over the theoretical maneuvers in the draft phase. So in the first game, Camille, Syndra, Jhin, Nidalee, Lucian, TF. So Camille, Syndra, Jhin, bans against the most relevant players on Suning's roster, and for them these are their most important champions. One thing, amazing win rate on Jhin. Angel, great performances on Syndra. Camille, similar story for Bin. On the other side, the great three bans of this world tournament. Also Suning again banning Lucian, but in this position it's not so spectacular. Seeing Graves now, we see Canyon's small champion pool, which I alluded to in the previous video, having only played 4 unique champions this tournament, is not pinched here, which makes sense in a bit. So he gets his second best pick at Worlds, the Graves. Also, all the priorities of Graves, as mentioned in previous videos, are connected with this pick here. Ezreal, Leona, locking bot early, which means they're hiding the other solo lanes. Additionally, Ezreal, very safe in the bot lane, can handle his own. Leona, a very good early roam champion. After level 3, she has all the means to do serious stuff in skirmishes. On Orianna, so On, a very good pick into Bin, as it's often banned, so he can't really out pressure the champion. Additionally, On, very easy to play, has good setup for Graves, similar story for Orianna, with her shields for Graves, very good, enabling the champion. Also, these three are very good in scaling department, which is also a nice benefit here. So, On, also with Leona here, we see no Braum, so On can just be picked, and his ult is always useful, unless Leona ults him or goes onto him to stop the ult, which is not actually what Leona wants to do. So yeah, there's no Braum counter pick option here for the On. Lastly, for the first phase, Azir. So Ezreal is not that great of a source for DPS. Yes, he's an attack auto carry, but he mainly uses his spells, right? Additionally, with items like Frozen Heart, Iceborne Godland, Ezreal's DPS is a bit less than the standard auto attack AD carry. So Azir offering here a huge DPS potential, especially against tanks. Ezreal needs quite some items to do damage to tanks, and even then he is not that great in that. And with On already locked in, as well as Orianna, in which Azir is a great matchup into, it's a quite an understandable pick. Obviously, Azir is still not a very good champion in the meta at the moment, because he takes a lot of time, he's very setup reliant, and so on and so on. We already saw great Azir players like BDD fail with the pick, and based on my research, Angel is not as great as BDD with the champion, so I'm not so much of a fan, but situational, it makes sense here. But then looking at the meta, Azir is still not that great. In the second ban phase, Jarvan, GP, Thresh and Caitlyn. So Jarvan, GP, if you look at the previous series, these are comfortable and quite niche picks for Suning. So Jarvan in the jungle and GP in the top lane, obviously. On the other side, Thresh and Caitlyn. Thresh is one of the most played champions for Baron, and Caitlyn is a very prominent pick in the bot lane, which can hurt Ezreal very much, because Ezreal is not that powerful in the laning phase, unless like he goes hard level 1 with his Q, but even then Caitlyn is very powerful with her extra range, getting in more auto attacks. So denying this very strong combo as well, because bot lane was not picked here. Then we see a Shen pick here. Remember, Shen is a top jungle flex at the moment, but thinking about it, being honest here, it's probably like nearly 100% jungle. Bin is no tank player, he just wants to play carries. So yeah, it's nearly 100% jungle, but it's still a flex pick in this sense. Then we see the Ashe Pantheon lane. I really like this here. So Ashe is not high pressure, but the high pressure champion like Caitlyn is already banned. So she's quite good into Ezreal regardless. She and Pantheon, with her E and Pantheon R and in general his roaming, are able to support Graves quite greatly. The similar story with Orianna and her shields. So they have more setup for Graves, and Ashe can actually push the wave quite greatly into the Ezreal, getting bot lane prior for enabling Pantheon to roam even more. Additionally, the pick potential of these two champions is very good, because if you look, Orianna and Graves don't really have setup in their own, and they need at least one other person here to help them. Then lastly we see Wukong, so locking Shen into the jungle, which was expected, and Wukong is very strange here. So Wukong against Ornn is not really what you're going into. Wukong wants to play against squishy champions, probably AD champions. We often saw him against Jace, for example. So not really liking it into Ornn. He works okayish with the rest of his team, with the Shen. The combination of Wukong Shen ult obviously quite good here, but in the individual isolation top lane it's not that great overall. Also Bin, I think he just played one Wukong game beforehand, so it's not even a very niche pocket pick for him, but the pick overall in the team sense is actually okay. So yeah, going now over the entire teams and how the game could turn out based on the draft. So in this phase, please note, I'm not really going into, so this player is very good, so this works this way, or so if this player makes a mistake, then this happens. Unless I specifically mention this, I'm just going from the point these champions are played correctly and no one is over or underperforming heavily, right? If like no skill shots land, then certainly a champion like Ezreal is very bad. Or even Leona, if she can't hit her R or E, then she's just a fucking like meatball running around. So obviously I assume these champions are played to their standard level. Also, I'm not like expecting Azir to 5-man Shurima shuffle every team fight, because that's just not the norm. So please understand that in this part of the analysis. Then starting. Both teams have some scaling options in either mid lane or top lane, right? This way, for the early and mid game, these lanes are not where the respective team wants to play around. So this is either the Azir and the Ornn, right? Ornn is also a tank, not really a source where a jungler wants to go and support him. Additionally, that's not really the matter for junglers to support the laners, but in a sense these laners can't really support their junglers in either top or mid lane here. Additionally, the bot lane for down one is heavily in favor here, with the power of Pantheon able to push with Ashe's wave clear, with a W max for example, and then she can just E, Pantheon can roam with early boots and so on into the other lanes, for example mid lane, right? Mid lane the Azir is quite safe, he can wave clear the waves and so on, so he's not that great of a target, but the enemy jungle is very juicy here. Taking over the complete control over bot lane, why not? Like, if you can have these extra jungle camps, the extra pressure, it's very good. So Showmaker could either double down on the mid game with Ludens for example, so he plays Orianna if you're looking at the screen, or scale alongside Azir with the tier build. In my personal opinion, either option is fine, because so either you have the more damage approach But do you actually need more damage? Well, Orianna is your only AP source, so maybe. But on the other side, the greater AP value from the tier build gives greater shields for your teammates, and Graves as a short range AD champion actually benefits quite nicely from these shields being greater. So I can totally understand that. Additionally, getting the extra shield doesn't hurt, and looking at it, there's actually little options for Suning to pressure Orianna into a Luden's build to get more power. So yeah, the build Showmaker did here is very nice in looking in the after spec, right? This analysis was mostly done before the game happened, so I didn't know how good it would turn out, but these were the options, and he chose, in my opinion, the correct one. So Graves against Shen in the jungle is very one-sided in terms of farming, right? So if Shen doesn't get an early kill for Tiamat, Graves is just dominating him in the CS department, and especially because of the bot lane pressure, he will also get neutrals. But that's something not in the isolation, but even though Shen with his W can actually hurt Graves quite a lot, but then again Graves will often have item leads, and there's little reason for Graves to actually engage in a fight against the Shen. You're not killing him, you're just taking his camps, you're not fighting the Shen, so yeah, that's that. Obviously with Shen getting level 6, he has gank options, but then again remember, it's not really a ganking meta, it's the farming meta for junglers. So now I've talked about getting level 6, so we're going later in the game here. So in these later stages, down 1 has some easier but more linear options to start fights. On the other side, Suning has fewer but more creative options, which certainly can be devastating for down 1. I already alluded that with the Wukong and Shen combination, which can cause quite a havoc in the backline. And if you look at down 1's team, there is actually little options to counteract that, to push them out of the fight, right? There's no, I don't know, Gragas ult or Alistar knockback. Like, just two examples for potential spells which could deter this type of engage. So with a safe tank top, a neutral mid lane state, and a hard farming jungler, as well as the strong bot lane pressure, down 1 should be able to get all the early drakes. And with the overall team comp being stronger earlier, so getting the power needed earlier than Suning, right? Suning needs more items, and with down 1 also having more gold because of their champions and the lane advantages they should generate, down 1 is getting stronger earlier than Suning. This is what this means. So Suning will lose these drakes, especially with the bot pressure being this way. There should actually be no chance Suning gets any early drakes. So Suning needs to fight a third or soul drake, depending on how fast down 1 is able to secure these drakes. In these fights, it mostly depends on positioning. So if Suning is able to get wards in the bottom jungle of down 1, or in any flank position respectively, right? Like, let's say they're not fighting around Drake, so they want to fight around Baron or Herald. In any fight they need flank wards, but in this case I'm talking about Drake because, as I already alluded to, down 1 will be able to secure the Drakes quite early and quite fast with the pressure they just have from these picks. So in this Dragon scenario, they need to get some wards in the Tribe Rush, maybe in bot lane, or maybe just behind the pit, or maybe they have to get even deeper wards because of down 1's knowledge, right? Down 1 knows that Wukong wants to flank, so they're going to prepare pink wards, so maybe Suning needs to place even deeper wards for a flank. Or maybe they just are able to get into a vision pocket, right, in a jungle camp. There can be vision pockets because of the walls. Maybe they can hide Wukong there. These are options they need to use. Otherwise, it's very hard for them, right? It's very hard for Wukong or Leona just to run at the enemy team, unless they have speed ups or unless the enemy team is slowed. or maybe both. Especially if you look at the enemy champions, so Ashe, Orianna and Ornn, it's very hard to just run into them because there's so much slows and so much space control with the Orianna ball, right? Maybe a Wukong can run over the ball, maybe a Shen can, but what about the follow-up, right? A Shen and a Wukong, they're not really damage threats per se, they're more of a CC engage combination, right? The damage then comes from the Azir respectively. And yes, Azir and Ezreal, you would think they have some great range, but again, remember the movement speed and the space control. The Ashe just has to hit W and they're slowed, which will deter them to move forwards, and then if they're slowed, it's even harder for them to dodge Orianna's ball or to avoid it, right? So down one, if they're front to back, they will hinder them really hard to overly apply this range advantage, right? Because just the slow, and then Azir and Ezreal can actually be caught and punished, even though they have these movement speed abilities. So then, if by chance, right, I already alluded to that down one should actually be able to generate great early leads, and then with dragons, maybe force fights, they can secure W's in, and then push with like in Soul and generate a great, really hard lead to finish the game soon. Especially looking at their champions, they do scale somewhat, but Orianna is not really a DPS champion for the late game, where Azir just scales infinitely, not really infinitely, but his DPS is very much more relevant than Orianna, because she's more shockwave reliant here. So if by chance, right, this should not really happen unless Suning like gets a really nice flank and wins a team fight, securing many bounties, and then right the game stalls out, right? If this happens and goes into the hard late game, so like 35 minutes, 4 items and so on, Suning mostly has the advantage here. So Ezreal, yes, he does less damage than Ashe in this scenario, but his safety is way greater in comparison to Ashe, and as such he's actually able to do damage while Ashe has to run away, or she's just dead, right? Ashe against Leona, Shen, Wukong, with the potential follow-up of an Azir ultimate, is just so much threat for Ashe, especially when these champions become so much tankier. They can't just be brushed off with some poke or some Orianna ult, like Orianna ult on a tank item focused Shen. It's not going to do much, and you can just continue to run at Ashe and E her, right? So Ashe will, even though individually she does more damage than Ezreal, in this scenario she is not able to apply this damage. So yeah, and remember what I said about Orianna, she's not really a DPS champion, she's more of a shotgun champion, right? Similar story, who has the other shotgun, Graves. So these champions have some burst potential, but they have to reload and they're really cooldown reliant. Ghost is the only DPS source, and as I just explained, he is very much threatened in these later stages, because even if they don't get a hard flank, if they're able to just run at them, and the deterrence that down one has is mostly damage reliant, and if their damage is not hard enough to deal with these tanks, they can just continue to run at them. That's the scenario of the late game here. So yeah, in these fights, Suning throws everything at him, at Ghost, and if they hit, Suning should win, right? Depending on canyon items, positioning, similar story with Orianna. So if Orianna can just instant kill Azir Ezreal, yeah, doesn't matter if Ghost dies, but that's very situational. But what if Suning don't hit Ghost with like their hard engage combo? So unless everyone dies instantly by some reason, there's still an Azir, who, if unthreatened, does the most damage of anyone in this late game scenario, right? He can just instant shred everyone. And with a Shen, Downward's pick potential in the later stage is also like very limited. So in an even late game state, without looking at player skills, as I explained at the very start. Suning should be quite the favorite here. So yeah, this is the situation of this late game. Now I've gone over every game state. Like, if you don't want to be spoiled a bit, just cut the video out now. So I'm just now going over like a few tidbits that happened in the game. On items and Infernal Drakes are actually a great source for Orianna and Canyon to do more burst damage, which compensates for the lack of DPS, which then with vision control gives actually down one a great amount of objective safety here. So with sweepers and so on, they can just secure the Drakes very easily, as well as Baron. And Suning is more reliant on their creative plays if down one positions correctly. This is now based on player skills, which is very different from the usual analysis here. As such, down one was actually able to get a win, but not in the fashion they should have actually gotten it. Right? As I said it time and time again, they needed early game leads, they got these. They needed early Drakes, they got these. But then they lost some crucial skirmishes here and there, and the game slowed down. And then it happened as I alluded to. It got very, very difficult for down one to save Ashe. And in many fights, Ashe just survived with a sliver of HP, which then turned the game around for down one in these cases. Suning could have easily won this after the botched mid-game plays from down one. But now down one gets the lead and wins the first game here. 1-0 down one. And now, yeah. See you in the next one.